Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves standing at the edge of the world, or at least, the edge of where the Emperor believes his world ends. The wind is dry and tastes like grit. You squint up at a ragged stretch of rocky hillside where thousands of specks, people like you, move like ants in the dust. They're hauling stones, swinging hammers, groaning beneath baskets of earth and lime. Welcome to your new job site, the Great Wall of China. Or at least one muddy piece of it. There's no majestic unveiling. No ceremony, no welcome speech from some smiling official. You're dropped off by a wagon that doesn't stop moving. You jump down, the wheels spatter you with more dust, and just like that, you're part of something vast, ancient, and incredibly uncomfortable. No one tells you. They don't really need to. There's no schedule, only work. Daylight means labor. Night means sleep, if you can call it that. No one speaks unless they must. Hauling stones from a nearby quarry half a li away. That's roughly a third of a mile. In fact, wall might be too generous. Right now, it's a jagged mound of tamped earth reinforced with rock and crude mortar. Some sections crumble as fast as they're built. Others are constantly being redone. It's a massive, endless patch job, and you're now one of the patchers. Doesn't he sound so bad until you realize you'll all be doing that for the next 8 hours straight, without shoes that fit or any kind of protection for your hands. Their chant has no melody, just rhythm. It keeps their feet in sync and their minds slightly less shattered. Your basket's heavier than it was this morning, or maybe your arms are just giving up. Either way, you trudge back to the base of the wall, tip out your load, and get a cracked ladle of warm water before the next round. The stars overhead are brilliant, like salt spilled on velvet. You'd admire them, but your hands are bleeding and your stomach growls with a hunger that's become familiar company. The water tastes faintly of iron. You pretend it's tea. One man catches your eye and mutters, "Don't breathe too deep here." Dust'll live in your lungs. They cooked the snakes over a fire, shared them, and promptly got food poisoning. Some say they were poisoned on purpose, too many mouths, not enough millet. Historians still argue whether these grim rumors were exaggerations or whether imperial supply chains really broke down that badly. But standing here, dry-mouthed and dizzy, you believe almost anything. He coughs violently, proving his point. The basket's cut into your palms. The path slopes unevenly. You slip more than once. No one helps you up. No one laughs. The silence afterward is the kind that crawls into your ears and lingers. The ones who've been here longer than you have a look something hollow behind the eyes. This isn't a punishment with a defined end. This is what your life is now. It's not fear exactly. It's like they stopped expecting anything. You didn't ask to be here. You probably won't survive it. But hey, at least the view's dramatic. The guards on the perimeter don't smile, and their spears aren't ceremonial. Runaways are beaten, branded, sometimes buried in a trench, as an example. No one asks what crime brought you here, because it doesn't matter. Whether you were born poor, said the wrong thing, or simply got unlucky, this is your new reality. But in your moment, none of that matters. The past is irrelevant, and the future's not promised. It's more like a massive network watchtowers, trenches, fortifications, and overlapping walls, built and rebuilt over centuries. You're working on just one piece of this sprawling ambition. There's only now, and it smells like sweat, horse dung, and crushed rock. The man beside you collapses without a sound. No one reacts. The foreman lifts a stick and jabs him in the side. No movement. 2 other workers casually drag him out of the way. He's not the first today. He won't be the last. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your feet blistered halfway through, and the rest has just been raw pain. The foreman barks something unintelligible, and a boy no older than 15 silently hands you a wicker basket, already fraying at the edges. This is your shovel, your lunchbox, and possibly your coffin all rolled into one. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge up toward the others, legs heavy from the days-long march that brought you here. You're not sure how long you're meant to stay here. Historians estimate that millions of laborers worked on the Great Wall across various dynasties, beginning as early as the 7th century BCE. Your first task? The wall itself doesn't look like the polished pictures you've seen in school books. You pass a group of older workers who seem to be ... singing, sort of. It's already too late to turn back. And in case you're wondering, no, the Great Wall isn't one unbroken line stretching across northern China. By midday, the sun is merciless. You pull your tunic over your head, trying to keep your neck from burning. You keep walking. A whisper goes around about a team farther west who found a snake nest under a pile of rocks. Later that evening, after your final trip to the quarry, you sit beside a fire too weak to warm your toes. Someone tells a joke something about a Qin emperor asking a ghost for help building a wall. As you lie down on the hard-packed ground, stones digging into your back, you realize this isn't a temporary assignment, and tomorrow? You get to do it all again. Your first mistake was assuming that everyone here had done something to deserve this. On your second day, while you awkwardly fumble to lash bamboo scaffolding together with frayed hemp rope, a toothless man beside you mentions he used to be a teacher. The emperor's reach is long and explanations are rarely required. You'd think massive infrastructure like this would require trained masons, engineers, and soldiers. You'd be half right. But the rest of the workforce, anyone unlucky enough to be noticed. He doesn't offer why he's here, and you don't ask. You just grunt and nod. A tax collector might visit, and the next morning a dozen farmers are chained together and sent north. The truth is, both ended up in the same mud. Official records, when they exist, tend to paint a cleaner picture. But legends passed down by villagers tell of mass conscriptions, families torn apart, men marching off never to return. And of course there are the ghost stories, but you'll hear more about those later. For now, you're trying not to get hit. Some dynasties were kinder than others, if kinder means feeding their workers semi-regularly, maybe something farther west. He's older than most here, missing 2 fingers, but still works circles around you. Qin Shi Huang first to unify China is said to have used hundreds of thousands of workers to connect and expand existing walls. He believed it would keep out the northern barbarians, protect trade routes, and assert dominance. That last bit, you suspect, is the real reason. The wilderness stretches in every direction. No roads, no maps. If you tried to run, you'd die of thirst before you got far. He sits beside you during a short rest, chewing on a piece of tree bark. Whether they even know where you are. Whether they think you're dead or just missing. You stopped counting the days weeks ago. The only thing that matters now is the next task. And the one after that. My father died out here, he says flatly. Same spot I'm working now. I found his boot under the mortar. He doesn't cry. He doesn't blink. You rotate tasks, digging a trench, mixing lime with sand and gravel, reinforcing a wall segment with reeds and earth. A breeze cuts through the dust and smells faintly of pine. You're still carrying stones. Lanterns are strung between stakes, but their glow is dim and flickering. A distant howl echoes through the hills. Wolf? Bandit? Or something older, harder to name? You hear an owl call in the distance. Someone says it's a bad omen, that owls are messengers of death. You scoff, then immediately regret it. Why tempt fate? One morning, a batch of wildflowers springs up beside the wall, bright purple and defiant. You're scolded for pausing to look at them. The rhythm becomes hypnotic. You don't think anymore. You just do. Someone dies every other day. It barely registers. And then there are the patrol's mounted men who seem to enjoy hunting more than guarding. You've already heard whispers of a deserter whose head now serves as a warning tied to a post outside the supply shed. He says he was captured during a border skirmish, given the choice to work or die. You don't ask which he picked. Others saw human labor as endlessly replaceable, more dirt to fill in the gaps. Later, a scrawny teen with a crooked leg hobbles by, carrying twice the load you can manage. They look well-fed, clean, their armor gleams, and their swords aren't tools for chopping wood. They don't speak to you. You're beneath notice. They're here to watch for threats, not protect you, mind you. Just ensure that the wall keeps growing and the laborers stay in line. He was conscripted as part of a seasonal labor lottery from his village. A man nearby, his skin the color of burned leather, mutters, "Don't let the overseer see you stop." Even breathing too long's a problem. No ceremony, no farewells, just a rope around the wrists and a long march east. And then there's you. Maybe you stole something, maybe your taxes were late. Maybe you just annoyed the wrong minor official. You follow the others, hacking at a hillside to carve out a new track for a mule train. The sun isn't even up yet. The torchlight flickers on everyone's faces, revealing expressions somewhere between numb and furious. It's not uncommon for entire villages to vanish overnight into this human machine. You're handed a crude pickaxe today. No one tells you what to do with it. You pause for a moment to rub your shoulder. That's when you hear the sharp whack of bamboo hitting flesh. It's not directed at you this time, but it's close enough to make your ribs tighten. The overseer doesn't yell. He doesn't need to. The sound of pain is its own language out here. Historians still argue whether the majority of Great Wall laborers were criminals or civilians. You meet a man with a foreign accent, thick and strange, hard to place. Maybe Central Asian. It's not like you're shackled, but the freedom here is just a formality. Sometimes you catch glimpses of soldiers, the real ones, not workers with makeshift armor. Midday again, and your hands are blistered anew. But there are moments fleeting, almost cruel, when beauty pierces through. A hawk circles overhead. The wall is an obsession for the emperors who commission it. And yet, as you lift another stone, you can't help but wonder, are we building a wall to keep others out or to keep ourselves in? The boy who gave you the basket yesterday speaks for the first time. You think about your own family. Night comes like a curtain drawn too fast. You lie down later than usual, curled in your cloak, knees to chest. You pull your hood tighter and pray for dreamless sleep. But the wall, it turns out, also owns your dreams. Morning doesn't begin so much as continue. The sky lightens gradually, but you were already awake if you even slept at all. A rock lodged beneath your hip kept you shifting every few minutes, and the night wind whistled through your bones. You stretch or try to, but your back immediately protests. Every muscle has declared open rebellion. You're reassigned today. Instead of hauling rock or digging ditches, you're part of a team constructing. That word sounds deceptively hopeful, like maybe you'll be putting bricks together with clever tools or using math or, logic. What they don't mention as much is that the early walls were barely more than glorified mud dams. The sections built during the Qin period used tamped earth, not stone, because stone was expensive and labor was, well, you. But when you arrive, what greets you is a pile of dirt, a row of reed mats, and some twisted sticks someone is optimistically calling scaffolding. The memory of your sister's laugh, your mother's stew, the smell of the straw roof when it rained, it's like they belong to someone else. Welcome to ancient engineering. The earth is being packed between wooden frames, and the matting is used to create a kind of mold. Now I just grow this wall. You both laugh, but it dies quickly. 2 workers shovel lime and ash into a pit nearby when mixed with sticky rice water. It'll help hold everything together. Yes, sticky rice. Believe it or not, Ming builders used a type of rice-based mortar that was surprisingly durable. But you're not lucky enough to be in the rice zone. Just dirt and despair for you. Here's how it works. You tamp down dirt in layers. He's dressed better than anyone else here, carries a writing brush tucked into his belt, and surveys the site with practiced disinterest. He doesn't speak, just nods once and rides off. You throw in pebbles, chunks of brick, sometimes even bones. Yes, really, your fingertips are raw. Your knees pop with every movement, but sleep doesn't come easy. And you'll be one day smaller. You stare up at the stars again, wondering if the Emperor ever sees them, if he even knows how this wall is really built. The rest of us just disappear under it. Your final job is to water the earth packing so it sets overnight. You fetch water from a shallow ditch that used to be a stream but now mostly smells like iron and regret. The reflection looking back at you in the water startles you. It's your face, but drawn and unfamiliar, older than it should be. You begin to spot odd things inside the earth. Bits of cloth, a finger bone. Once, even a tiny carved figurine someone's charm may be dropped or buried intentionally. And no one retrieves your name tablet, something most workers don't even have. Your spirit stays trapped in the stone forever. That's why some parts groan in the wind, someone says. Not the wall moving, that's the dead trying to remember their names. You pocket it without thinking, rubbing the smooth surface between blisters as you work. It gives you no luck, but it does give you something to hold. He looks half dead and thanks you without a word. The baskets are tied with frayed hemp cords that dig into your shoulders. Another is pinned and likely won't see morning. The overseers do not call for help. No one gets time off. You step around the blood as the foreman yells for the rest of you to keep the tempo. You start walking up the slope, watching your steps so you don't spill the load or worse, trip and get trampled by the oxen dragging logs uphill behind you. Others think it was mostly chaos, managed by brute force and fear. From your vantage point, standing ankle-deep in mortar that smells like wet ash and misery, it definitely feels more chaos than genius. You and the others spend hours slamming the earth, trying to compact it without your wrists shattering. There's a rhythm to it, thump thump whack, but it's not meditative. It's punishing. Your arms go numb, your hearing dulls. And still the foreman yells, demanding more pressure, less rest. Then you wet it, press it, cover it with reed mats, and repeat. Over and over. The goal is to build a platform that won't erode too quickly. Technology in this case means 10 men jumping up and down in unison on a mound of clay like it's the world's worst trampoline class. You're given a wooden mallet with a handle that's already cracked. Historians often marvel at how the Great Wall, especially the Ming Dynasty sections, survived centuries of weather and war. Someone mutters, "They're building the wall with our lives." It's said with no drama, just fact. You swap places with another worker who's hauling soil in 2 hanging baskets balanced on a bamboo pole. Your arms burn, your legs wobble. You try to distract yourself with thoughts of home, but the images have already started to fade. At the top, you reach what barely passes for a working site. A few logs mark the new section's outline. A young man next to you jokes, "I used to grow vegetables." As you tamp, shovel, and stack, the hours blur. In the distance, you hear a loud crack. A log snaps. A scaffold collapses. Screams. Dust clouds rise. When it clears, 2 men are dead. That night, you learn a superstition. If you die building the wall, you half laugh, half shiver. There's a debate among scholars about how standardized the building methods were. Some argue the ancient manuals point to a surprisingly advanced logistical system. The only break you get is when a supervisor makes his rounds on horseback and everyone freezes in place pretending to be productive. As he disappears over the ridge, someone mutters, "That's the kind of man who gets to say he built the wall." You finish your shift well after sundown. You stagger back to the camp, find your ragged blanket, and collapse without ceremony. As you drift off, the last thought that sticks to your mind is this: tomorrow the wall will be 1 row taller. The 4th day greets you with a sour stomach and an aching jaw from grinding your teeth in your sleep. No alarm, no rooster. Just a boot tapping your ribs and the same barked phrase: up, move. No one ever asks what you re-good at. There is no time for aptitude assessments when you read cheap labor. You're assigned to the rope team, which sounds like it might involve climbing. It does not. It involves pulling. You roll over onto stiff limbs and drag yourself up. Today, your role's been changed again. Specifically pulling sleds loaded with stone blocks, the emperors got ambitious. Especially the Ming, who insisted on stone lots of it. You wouldn't know. They arrive caked in dust and as heavy as the silence between commands. Slippery with loose gravel and patches of sun-baked clay that clings to your soles. Every step is a negotiation. Your legs are shaking before the halfway point, but no one dares stop. A boy in the next rope line collapses. Probably some official claiming credit for this stretch. The man beside you snorts. Bet he never saw this place. They don't even cut him free. They just drag him with them until he wakes or dies. He wakes, barely. It's hot today, so you sit under the shadow of a cart. You nod politely, though you suspect the story's been stretched more than the rope you're holding. Some poor soul decided that now is the perfect time to position stone blocks atop a higher segment. You leap back just in time, scraping your elbow on the scaffolding. It's not deep, but it oozes. The foreman barely glances over. You're handed a dirty rag. Bandages are for officers. You climb rickety wooden scaffolds held together by more prayer than design, carrying one end of a long wooden lever. 4 others do the same, but no real clouds gather thick and fast. The air becomes heavy, then suddenly splits with a downpour. Rain, real rain, comes in sheets. Workers cheer weakly at first, lifting their faces. You do too. It washes the grit from your eyelids. Then it turns cold and the cheer fades. Another worker just sits in the mud, laughing softly. The wind cuts through like knives. Someone nearby coughs all night. You hope it's nothing. You know it is something. You wonder if he's broken or just free in some way you can't understand. The scaffolding starts to wobble. The slope becomes a river of mud. One says it's not to keep invaders out, it's to impress the heavens. You grab the first thing you can, a cracked plank, and press it over the lime pit. Too late. The rain mixes with it. Now it's a dangerous slurry. The emperor wants the gods to see his line from the stars. Another says it's simply a monument to fear, built not for enemies. but for his own people to show he can reshape mountains if he wants to. The goal is to gently roll a block into place using muscle pulleys and unearned optimism. A shriveled old worker speaks in riddles. The wall grows, but our shadows shrink. You're not sure if he's poetic or just heat sick. A man at the front beats a drum to keep rhythm, like some cursed metronome for agony. It jolts to a stop. Your arm nearly wrenches out of its socket. The man behind you swears under his breath. The foreman doesn't wait. Bamboo stick right on the thigh. You stumble forward again. There's no time to recover. And you're the mule. Except mules get better treatment. You're not in the Ming period, of course, but the builders before you laid the groundwork for that glorious obsession with permanence. You're not a scholar, but from where you stand knee-deep in mud, watching the blood drip from your arm, you'd say it's mostly about power. And right now, your job is to drag that vision 1 foot forward at a time. Turns out, not every section of the wall is built from compacted dirt. 8 of you are roped together like pack animals. Each sled holds massive quarried stones, supposedly shaped somewhere downhill. Thud, step, thud, pull. The sled groans over the packed earth, then hits a stone. The root winds uphill because of course it does. Historians estimate that certain stone sections of the Great Wall require thousands of tons of material per mile. You pass a marco stone, freshly chiseled with dates and names. Lunch, if you can call it, that is a ladle of thin gruel and half a steamed bun. Another man tells you a story he swears it is true about a worker who tied his own hand to the sled so he wouldn't stop pulling, even after death. After the break, you're moved to lifting duty. Of course, the block slips, lands sideways. Everyone shouts. In rare moments of rest, your fellow workers trade theories about why the wall is really being built. Historians still argue whether the wall was truly defensive or mostly psychological. Some believe its primary purpose was to channel the movement of nomads, not stop them. And then, just when your legs feel like splintering, thunder rumbles on the horizon. At first, you think it's the gods answering. You're ordered to cover the materials, some get tarps. Others use their bodies. Someone yells. A man slides down the slope, unable to stop. You hear a sickening crunch below. That night, wet to your bones, you huddle under a makeshift tent of woven reeds. You turn your face into your arms, trying to remember a time when you weren't made of soreness and silence. You fail, and in the morning the wall will still be there. So will you, or not. But the stones won't care either way. You wake up hungrier than you've ever been. The hunger isn't sharp anymore. It's something dull and ancient, like your body has stopped ringing alarms and just accepted this new low hum of emptiness. It's millet again. Always millet. A few floating greens if you're lucky. It's hot, at least. Warm sludge is still better than cold sludge. You stand, bones creaking, and your first thought is food followed by a deep, resigned sigh because you already know what breakfast will be. The flies there are smarter than most people you know. When meat does arrive, it's usually from animals that died of exhaustion or worse, mystery meat that no one can identify. You once saw a man pull a scrap of something hairy out of his soup and just keep eating. That's what survival looks like here. It happens today. An older man who'd been coughing for weeks finally didn't wake up. No one is surprised. No one cries. But the smell of rice cooking draws everyone closer, and for a moment even you forget where you are. You shuffle over to the mess pit, where a sour-faced cook ladles out the same gray gruel as yesterday and the day before that, or a bribe for the afterlife. You consider it. You have nothing left to offer but a rock shaped like a heart you found in the quarry. You bury under your sleeping mat that night. Apparently, if you die with hunger still in your belly, you come back as a hollow, a spirit that prowls the walls at night seeking warmth in a bowl. They whisper, one man says, ask you to share. You line up for water and they run out. You try to trade for salt and they say there's none. But a guard, laughing with another, bites into a dried peach just a few feet away. The scent lingers in your nose long after he's gone. If you say no, they sit on your chest while you sleep. 2 days later, he was reassigned to the night team that works with no torches. No one's seen him since. Sometimes you boil it. Sometimes you're too tired to care. Some traveling inspector is due tomorrow, so the overseers want the camp to appear well-fed. How it felt to eat and not worry if the next bite would hurt you. You dream of a dinner table with bowls that never empty. Your sister offers you sweet tea, smiling, and the fire crackles in the corner. You get a small strip of what tastes like goat jerky. It's chewy, salty, and probably several months old. It's the best thing you've eaten in weeks. It's possible some officials believed workers were being looked after. It's more likely they didn't ask questions. When starvation is slow and widespread, it becomes invisible. You blow on it and take a sip. The taste is a blend of wet cardboard and despair. Bark, roots, worms. One guy boiled his leather belt until it softened enough to chew. Another tried eating candle wax. You didn't stop him. What's the point? A group of workers once tried to raid a supply tent. They were caught. The punishment wasn't death. It was worse. They were forced to work double shifts with no food at all. One of them didn't make it past the second day. He collapsed in the lime pit. They left him there. You chew the unchewable bits slowly, trying to trick your body into thinking it's a feast. Some people smuggle in bits of dried rat or wild roots, but most of those stories end with dysentery. One guy found mushrooms once. He spent 2 days staring at the sky and calling himself a crane. He got better. Sort of. You trade a chunk of stale flatbread for a half pickle with a man who says he used to be a butcher. You ask him if the meat here even is meat. He just looks at you and shakes his head. Historians often gloss over what the laborers were actually fed, but records from the Ming period suggest that millet gruel, pickled vegetables, and sometimes dried tofu were standard. Problem was, the portions were rarely enough, and the food was usually spoiled by the time it reached remote wall camps. There's a side station for meat. You don't even go near it. And water? It's whatever runoff the workers can gather, usually from ditches, puddles, or if it's a good day, a nearby stream. Your midday meal is the same as breakfast, just colder. The only real variety in meals comes when someone dies and the overseers allow a brief ceremony, which, in this case, means a small communal fire and the right to boil some actual rice. Someone starts talking about ghosts again. You laugh nervously, hoping it's a joke. It's not. The man walks away without smiling. There's another strange practice you've noticed. Some workers bury a coin or a piece of cloth near their bedrolls. A charm, perhaps. It's no secret that many workers resort to eating things that should never be food. Historians still argue whether the wall's supply lines were truly intended to be humane or just logistical. There are whispered rumors about secret caches of food rations hidden by officers for their own use. The cruelty isn't always overt. Sometimes it's just bureaucracy. You once saw a man sneak off during lunch to dig up a hidden bundle. He thought no one saw. He was wrong. Tonight's meal is special, if you can call it that. Afterward, everyone is a little quieter. The salt makes your body remember things, how meals used to taste. You fall asleep thinking of steamed buns and ginger broth. You wake up with your mouth dry and your hands shaking. And breakfast is millet again. You don't hear the whistle. You feel it, the sharp stab of a boot nudging your ribs again, your body now so used to pain it almost sighs in response. It's not time to wake up. It's time to resume. When it's time to rest, you lay wherever the wind isn't stabbing hardest. You sleep on dirt, gravel, and sometimes leftover stone shards. Some workers scavenge straw from the mule paddocks. It smells like manure and mold, but when your options are lice-infested blankets or bare ground, you get less picky. Some sleep on their sides, curled up tight to preserve body heat. Others lie flat with their arms crossed, like they're already preparing for burial. But just endlessly, down and down through layers of tamped earth and bones. You woke gasping, heart hammering, sweat soaking your tunic. No one noticed. Everyone dreams like that. No matter where you lay your head, something is always off rocks digging into your spine. A draft on your ankles, someone coughing too close. You build a tiny wall of rocks around your mat for comfort. It collapses every night, just like you. Which, to be fair, might be smart planning. He stares off into nothing and says he keeps waking to the sound of hammering even though there is none. It's inside my skull, he whispers. You believe him. The smoke stings your eyes, but it helps with the insects. Another believed a bird had whispered his death date. You're not immune either. Once you woke up convinced you were home, lying beside your father's old fire pit only to open your eyes. Helps block the moonlight, he says. You nod in thanks. That night you dream of a room with walls that don't to collapse and a bed that doesn't to bite, and see nothing but mud and a dozen blistered feet. You share the warmth with 5 others, no one speaks much. Official accounts mention rotations, but these often meant moving from one kind of exhausting task to another. Real rest? That was probably reserved for the supervisors. It's not affection, it's mutual survival. Your breath fogs in the air, freezing before it vanishes. You press your hands to your mouth to warm them. It barely helps. A foot ends up in your ribs. Someone else snores into your neck. No wind, no animals, just the creak of settling timber and the occasional grunt from someone shifting in their sleep. You lie there listening to your own pulse in your ears and wonder if this is what dying feels like. Quiet, gradual, unnoticed. Another rolls over and kicks you square in the shin. It smells faintly of cedar and sweat, and you treasure it like it's silk. A fellow worker eyes it. You trade him a wedge of hardened millet cake for it. Best trade you've made all week. The foreman's stick doesn't always find you when you're lucky. Other times it does, and you learn to keep moving even in your sleep. You don't complain. It's better than freezing alone. One mutters prayers in a dialect you don't recognize. You once heard someone crying softly into his blanket. No one said anything. You're assigned to hauling logs today, though hauling is generous. Dragging, cursing, and occasionally dodging falling timbers is more accurate. You scratch yourself raw and wake up to red trails running down your legs. Someone tells you to rub a clove of garlic on the bites. There's one guy with a wheezing, gurgling sort of rhythm. You've all plotted his quiet removal, but deep down he's company. If he stops, that means something worse. Another says charcoal ash works better. You try both, neither helps. The logs are for scaffolding and reinforcement, since dirt alone doesn't last, especially when it rains. You spend the morning with a splinter the size of a matchstick wedged under your thumbnail and no time to deal with it. After a while, sleep becomes something you do to survive, not because it helps. It's never restorative. Just a short pause in discomfort. Beds don't exist here. Lice, yes, those too. Tiny, relentless. Historians rarely mention the parasite problem on the wall, but it's all anyone talks about at night. That and who snores the loudest. Tonight you lie next to a fire someone coaxed from damp twigs and leftover resin. Sometimes the dreams are worse than waking. Last night you dreamed of falling not from a tower or cliff. A fellow laborer confesses he hasn't slept properly in 3 weeks. You try changing sleeping spots, doesn't help. During winter it gets brutal. Blankets are shared. You huddle close. Some men press against each other back to back just for warmth. The worst nights are the silent ones. One night you find a scrap of fabric soft from someone's robe, maybe. You stuff it under your head as a pillow. The camp develops a strange rhythm. Some men hum softly before sleep. Others tell the same joke over and over. Sometimes you're so exhausted you collapse mid-task and wake up hours later in the same spot, covered in dust. Sleep deprivation does strange things. One morning, a man insisted he saw the emperor in the sky, pointing at him. Historians still argue whether sleep stations or rotational shifts ever existed for the workers. One guard, oddly kind for once, gives you a strip of cloth for your eyes. In that dream, you're warm, your limbs don't ache, no one shouts. Then you wake up with your mouth full of dust and your neighbor's elbow in your ear. Welcome back to reality. You hear the yelling before you see the blood. 2 men are down by the lime trench, one holding his shoulder, the other with a gash across his face. The air's sharp with tension. A crowd starts to form, but no one steps in. They know better. 2, 5, you lose count. The men don't scream, they've learned not to. You've learned not to react. The quotas are insane by the end of each day. You're expected to move hundreds of pounds of rock, dig out precise trenches, and reinforce your section before dark. Long coiled leather ones, sometimes tipped with bone. Some say they were inspired by steppe cavalry tactics, quick, efficient, memorable. You flinch when the sound cracks across the sight, even if it's far away. And if you don't, well, bamboo isn't the worst they've got. The overseer storms over, no questions, just consequences. Bamboo stick, thick and unforgiving, whistles through the air. One strike, that's the lesson here. Obedience through exhaustion. Whips are used more rarely, but when they come out, you remember. You laugh the first time. Then you realize it's probably true. Your fingers blister even through the crude leather strips you've tied around your palms. The man next to you is coughing again, deep and wet. Each breath sounds like gravel in a kettle. No one says anything. To mention it would mean involving the overseer, and that never ends well. Lifts double loads. Sprints back for more. Everyone knows it's a bad idea. That they're required to maintain a balance too few bodies, and their superiors assume they're going soft. So each week, someone has to go. You don't know if it's true, but it feels true. Sure enough, one day he outpaces a guard's horse, and the overseer calls him out. Just an unspoken hierarchy. Guards above overseers, overseers above laborers, laborers above no one. The overseer listens, then breaks the handle across his face. The man falls, doesn't rise. They carry him to the edge of the work zone and cover his body with stones. It takes under 5 minutes. He never yells. Some say he was once a builder too. Others say he's just better at hiding his cruelty. You suspect not. The cruelty feels too normal to be accidental. It's not chaos. It's control. Trying to show me up? He spits. The boy tries to explain. He doesn't get the chance. By nightfall, he's transferred. One group refused to lift their baskets until they were given water. They got it eventually, but also a whipping line, 10 lashes apiece, one after another. After that, they worked twice as hard. The next day, his mat is empty. There's no appeal, no hearing, no record. Punishment is instant and often arbitrary. A missed stone, a bent nail. A joke said too loudly, you not been spoken to. You smile without teeth. You become small. Of another who was ordered to build his own grave after being accused of stealing food. You manage to catch yourself, but the foreman sees. He walks over slowly, stick in hand. You brace for it, but instead he just sneers and mutters, "Clumsy worm," before walking off. If you're invisible, you survive. If you're efficient but quiet, you last. If you stand out good or bad, you get hurt. He finished the hole, knelt inside it, and never came out. But out here on this ragged stretch of dusty wilderness, nothing feels reformed. It feels primal. But those who try often disappear. Maybe the bribes weren't enough. Maybe they were, and that's why no one sees them again. Like a punishment designed not to fix anything, but just to remind you of your place. One guy just fell asleep standing up and got 10 lashes for disrespect. Historians debate whether this kind of treatment was systemic or situational. Some argue that early dynasties treated workers as expendable. Others claim reforms came later. That group builds the hard sections, steep passes, crumbling cliffsides, areas so remote the supply trains give up. They're usually chained. They work longer, sleep less, eat worse. No one makes eye contact with them. And still they say you're lucky. Why? Because you're not in the punishment unit. You hear stories of a man tied to a plank and left in the sun for 2 days after, undermining morale. There's a running joke that the overseers must be paid per bruise. Today you're back on trench duty, digging out a drainage line. It's dry, but the soil is hard as stone. You trip, just once, just slightly your foot catches a root. You're not sure if that's better or worse. The real fear isn't the beatings, it's being noticed. There's a young guy, maybe 16, always overeager, wants to impress. A whisper goes around that the overseers carry death quotas. Still, some of the overseers are different. One man in black robes, older, slow-moving, speaks kindly, gives extra rations to the injured, and sometimes writes down names. And then there are the whispers of bribes workers who offer small treasures, heirlooms, coins sewn into sleeves in exchange for lighter duties or protection. There are no formal rules here. One night you watch as a man argues over a broken tool. His shovel splinters clearly worn beyond use. He tries to explain. No one speaks of it again. Historians still argue about the level of state oversight versus local authority. Did the emperor know this was happening? Did he care? A few try to fight back not with fists, but with silence. And you? You learn to bow just slightly, not too much. You keep your eyes down. You survive. It starts with a horn deep, low, drawn out like thunder stuck in a throat. You freeze mid-swing, pickaxe halfway into the dirt. Everyone else does too. Heads turn uphill. The guards on the ridge are shifting, shouting. One points to the tree line. Tailies whispered around the fires about bandits, raiders, northern horsemen who test the wall not by storming it but by haunting its fringes. You're a builder with a dislocated toe and a sock made from stitched rice sacks. But you run uphill anyway, not toward safety there isn't any but toward confusion. You always assumed the stories were just that, stories. Until now, it demands. And when it senses danger, even the lowest worker becomes a part of that machinery. You've heard this from a scholar once back home before you were dragged here. And now, seeing it snap into place like a trap around a hare, you understand. Everyone moves slower, eyes scanning the dark, waiting for movement in the trees. You try to sleep, but every rustle becomes a threat. Every twig crack is a hoof. The wall isn't just stone. It's reaction, coordination, panic. You believe him. It's splintered, dull, and a bit short for anyone with long arms, but it's still a weapon. You clutch it, hands trembling, knowing full well that if someone actually charges, you'll drop it and run, or freeze, or scream, maybe all three. Some argue they simply rode around it, bred their way through it, or used it as a marker for targeting weak garrisons. They pushed back a raiding party, only to have the commanding officer execute half the local laborers for cowardice during battle. Work returns to its old rhythm. The guards disappear. The soldiers retreat to wherever they live when not shouting at you. You scan the hills like it matters, like you'd even have a chance if something came galloping over. You go back to stacking bricks, this time repairing a breach left by the rain. No trial, no appeal. He says it like he's describing the weather. No attack, no horn. Just the same aching start to another workday, and the wall continues to rise. You wonder, is this wall meant to protect the empire or to distract it? You offer him water, and he nods and thanks. He says he's seen skirmishes to the north, villages burned, horses cut loose to confuse patrols. The wall holds, he says, more like a question than a fact. You can't speak for the strategy. You just know that right now you're a pebble in an enormous defensive bluff. And if something breaks, it won't be the generals paying the price. Inside, charred bones, no explanation, no guard posted. You walk on, it'll be the rope pullers, the tampers. The anonymous backs like yours. Then the second horn sounds. You've heard rumors, of course. You're ordered to drop tools. Form line. Someone yells. No one knows what that means. You're not a soldier. They're shouting orders, stringing bows, positioning themselves along the raised platforms. You're handed a bucket. Inside, hot oil, not for you, for the invaders. The wall has watchtowers that no one can reach. You've seen them tiny outposts perched on cliffs, barely connected to the rest. For signaling, someone said. But others claim those towers are decoys, built just to look impressive from a distance. It turns out the wall doesn't just defend. A guard barks, to the cauldron. And you obey, rushing with the sloshing contents to one of the metal pots perched atop the wall's edge. You've never used a weapon. Your only experience of violence is getting smacked for dropping a basket. Now you're part of an ancient defense system. The soldiers are suddenly everywhere real ones, not the half-bored overseers. You stare into it, unsure what to do. A few mounted silhouettes appear on a ridge, watch for a moment, then vanish into the haze. Still, the camp remains tense all day. No one is allowed to leave. Rations are late. The guards are angry. You're sent to dig deeper ditches around the perimeter. You've already been awake for hours. The wall was never one continuous barrier. It was a system beacons, forts, towers, garrisons. The attackers never come close, not this time. Maybe it was a test, a feint. That night, the watchfires burn higher than usual. You think of your section leader's words earlier. They don't need to break the wall, just scare the people building it. Historians debate whether the nomadic tribes, the Xiongnu, the Mongols later on ever truly feared the wall. One man at the fire tells a story how his brother fought in a skirmish once, just beyond the wall. You're given a spear for the night shift. But dawn comes, slow and golden, burning the fog off the ridge. The oddest part? You pass a partially collapsed watchtower later that day. It leans like a drunken man, abandoned halfway through. By noon, the fear from the horn has faded, but the tension lingers. Now every movement on the horizon feels ominous. That night, a traveler passes through the camp, a message runner, covered in dust, lean and silent. And then he's gone like smoke. You envy his ability to leave. You look around at the wall rising behind you. Strong, yes, but only in parts. Gaps remain. Cracks form, workers fail, rocks tumble. Sleep that night comes late. You dream of horns again. Only this time, no one answers. Your hands don't feel like yours anymore. You stare at them one morning, cracked, scabbed, fingers swollen at the knuckles, and wonder if they were always this misshapen. Maybe they were, or maybe the wall is remaking you, one layer of skin at a time. You were supposed to shape the stones just enough so they all fit snugly against their neighbors, seamless, strong, impenetrable. You whack one hard and the splinter doesn't go where it should. You angle the chisel differently. Still wrong. You try again. You start to sweat, then swear, then bleed because now your fingers caught under the edge. Like puzzle pieces no one actually cut. You can't tell if he's joking. you decide not to ask. They move you to stonework today, precision tasks. Not your favorite. It tastes like dirt and iron, but it's wet. That's all that matters. Some stones are still aligned so tightly, not even a blade can slip between them. Which makes you wonder, who were those workers? Did they also bleed on the granite? Did they also get whipped for misaligning a corner? Over and over. Until it becomes a lullaby for your limbs. Until your mind drifts and starts to wander not home, but into odd thoughts. That if you press your ear against the right one, you can hear voices trapped inside chanting work songs or whispering warnings. They remember, he says. Even when we don't. Like how many stones you'll touch before you die. Like whether the wall will ever end. Just a groan, then a rumble, then a full body shiver through the earth. Dust flies, stones tumble, you run, you cough. You hear screams. When the cloud clears, 3 men are missing. You think the answer's simpler, no one cared. Can't show weakness, someone says. Not when the inspectors come. Not about safety. Not about dignity. Just about height, length, and speed. It looks smooth, almost soft in the dark. Almost like the wall isn't real. But then your back spasms and your fingers cramp, and reality returns like a slap. He works slower, but with astonishing care. His stones fit perfectly. You press your palm to the one you shaped yourself. You ask him how long he's been here. He shrugs. Too long or not long enough. Buried or crushed. Or both. If you work too slowly, you're lazy. Too quickly and you're careless. You aim for invisible. They're seen as elite among laborers not because they get better treatment, but because they're trusted with symmetry. Just initials. A tiny face. A bird. Your mark, your rebellion. Your reminder that you were here and not just the wall. You place your ear to a warm stone at dusk after a long shift. At first, nothing. Then maybe ... a vibration? Or maybe your pulse, maybe it's nothing. Or maybe that's what it always feels like. It's one of the few bits of pride you see out here. One man carries a level he carved himself out of bamboo and string. Emperor gets his compass, he says. I get this. He grins like he's won. Stonework sounds respectable, even noble, until you realize it mostly means squatting in the sun, chipping away at granite with iron tools. So blunt you may as well be tapping the rock with a spoon. The stones don't want to cooperate. The man next to you notices, shrugs, and mutters. Blood helps the mortar stick. Despite the monotony, this is skilled work. Some of the older laborers seem oddly proud of it. From where you sit, chipping at a stone that resists every strike, it feels like both. There's discipline here and suffering. They hum quietly while shaping blocks, as if each stone is a verse in a longer song. You hear one say, when this wall still stands in 1,000 years, they'll be touching my work. He says it with no vanity, just fact. It's true, too. Historians have confirmed that many parts of the wall, especially the Ming-era segments, show stunning masonry. There is a debate about how much of the wall was truly engineered versus just assembled through brute repetition. You spend hours hammering, adjusting, checking, lifting, and repeating, always under the same sun, always with someone watching. Midday brings a brief water break. You sip from a clay vessel passed down the line. Someone nearby shows you a trick. Wrap your cloth around the chisel's handle to protect your hands. You try it. It helps, a little. Then it's back to the rhythm. You memorize the tempo. Tap, tap, pause, adjust, tap. There's a small group of men who specialize in laying cornerstones. Sometimes you carve symbols on the underside of a block, nothing elaborate. One night, a man in your row speaks of a legend, that certain stones contain the souls of those who worked them. You try it once, half smiling. You're not sure whether to feel comforted or haunted. One afternoon, a section collapses. No warning. The overseer says it was poor stone alignment, blames the dead, orders new materials. The bodies? Just part of the foundation, he mutters. Historians still argue whether these collapses were due to rushed work or shoddy planning. That night, the survivors work double time. No rest until the section's rebuilt. You find yourself next to a man who's missing 3 fingers. When your shift ends, you sit alone for a moment, watching the moonlight spill across the stone. You lie down next to your pile of unfinished blocks. And for just a second, it feels warm. Like someone's memory. You're not sure who thought it was a good idea to build a road here, but today you're part of that mistake. They call it a transport path, meant to carry materials up the slope more efficiently. A slip here won't just cost you bruises. It might send you tumbling into the ravine below where broken carts and older bones are already resting. It is really just another excuse to move rocks from one pile to another and call it progress. You can't read them, and neither can most of the crew, but a foreman comes by and points at the dirt. Here to there, flat. That's it. That's the plan. The man next to you uses a flat stone. Sharper, he says deadpan. You nod and steal one for yourself. The ground here is uneven, cracked by frost in winter and baked solid by sun in summer. The incline is sharp brutally so. You start the morning by clearing brush and debris with a shovel so blunt it might be better used as a dinner plate. The engineers or whoever passes for planners out here have left instructions scratched into a wax board. So you dig. The tools are mismatched. The wheelbarrow has one wheel slightly oval-shaped. When it tips, the gravel spills, and you're handed a broom made from dried reeds and ordered to try again. You spend entire days preparing to do the real work, only to be told it's delayed. No one chases him. Most who run don't make it. The forests hold their own dangers: bandits, wolves, cliffs disguised by thickets. But occasionally, someone disappears and doesn't come back broken. That keeps the hope alive. Can't lay bricks if the oxen can't climb, the foreman says, as if that explains anything. Official records suggest patrols were dispatched. But here, no one really has time to chase ghosts. They barely keep track of the living. And dig. Their eyes are wide and dull. One collapses, legs folding like cloth. The driver shrugs. No one helps. The carcass will be used tomorrow for grease, maybe, or boiled down to glue. You start collecting from a pile down the hill, but they're heavy, and after the fourth trip, your shoulder is shaking. They say the Emperor wants this stretch done by winter. The other snorts. He'll want a lake to freeze uphill next. They laugh, and you realize that even those in charge understand the absurdity. But they still make you do it. A guard offers you motivation, a word that sounds suspiciously like punishment with better PR. You wave him off and push through. Forgotten. Just another layer beneath the wall, and dig some more. You lean against a boulder and close your eyes. The wind carries the sounds of chiseling, hammering, the occasional yell, and the low, rhythmic groan of wood under tension. You haul gravel from one car and tamp it down, only for it to slide loose again. Meanwhile, oxen struggle up the slope, dragging more stone. You wonder if the same logic applies to you. For a moment, they're children again, galloping across imaginary plains. A guard shouts, and they scatter like sparrows, but for a split second, the whole sight smiled. It's bitter and rough, but it cuts the edge off your exhaustion. Someone starts humming a tune, an old folk song you don't know the words to, but the rhythm is familiar. It's the rhythm of carrying, of building, of surviving. As you work, you hear a strange hissing sound, steam rising from a crack near a hot spring. It smells like sulfur. Dragon breath, someone calls it. You sit by the new road, which is still crooked, still bumpy, but slightly better than before. A cart manages to roll halfway up without breaking. Everyone cheers weakly. It's the closest thing to victory you've had in days. Another says there are spirits under the earth, furious that men would carve through sacred hills. You don't disbelieve him. The Great Wall was built across an astonishing variety of terrain: mountains, deserts, grasslands, cliffs. Some sections required not just construction, but full terrain transformation, cutting into rock faces, building retaining walls, rerouting water. And every inch of it was moved by backs like yours. There's a peculiar kind of madness in building roads to help build walls. One man drops his pickaxe and walks off into the trees. Historians still argue whether deserters from the wall were hunted or simply left to fate. You're told to gather large stones to edge the new path. By midday, your face is sunburnt, your back is wet with sweat, and your thighs feel like sacks of wet sand. Then you hear it, laughter, actual laughter. You turn and see two younger workers pretending to ride their pickaxes like horses. That evening, the sky turns pink with dust and smoke. A fellow worker lights a pipe and passes it around. You take a drag. Later, in the dark, you overhear two overseers talking. The irony you think as you lie down in the dirt is that this road, this path, will soon be buried under stone. Just like you. The inspector arrives with almost no warning. Just a cry from the hilltop, official. And suddenly the whole camp transforms. People who are dragging their feet snap to attention. The palanquin is painted red and gold, though the paint is chipped. It still gleams in the sun like it remembers a time when it mattered more. Brooms appear from nowhere. Fires are tamped out. And you? Thinner, paler. His nails are long, kept that way to prove he doesn't work with his hands. His sleeves are impossibly wide, like sails. When he steps out, he doesn't even glance at the ground, just walks as though the earth should move to meet him. Scribble, scribble, adequate. Scribble, scribble. That mortar line is crude. Scribble, scribble, scribble. You're handed a rag and told to scrub your face. Then, to the scribe, appearance reflects morale. Low morale indicates laziness. Laziness infects stone. He descends the ridge slowly, riding a palanquin carried by 4 men dressed in matching robes. You've seen officials before, but this one looks different. The overseers bow. Deep, too deep. One smacks the back of a worker who forgets to kneel fast enough. You press your forehead to the dirt. A month later, the slope collapsed. Karma, maybe. That man had a crushed foot from last year, worked through it. Never complained. Now he's reassigned to carrying waste buckets. No promotion, just displacement. Everyone pretends they haven't been bleeding through their shoes. You work with exaggerated movements. You overlift, oversweep, oversmile. The guards smile too, though theirs look more like bare teeth. It smells like sweat, lime, and crushed grass. Off to the next camp or maybe a hot bath. Very patriotic. From your position, the answer is obvious. The wall might be the project of an empire. The guards are grumpier. The extra rice vanishes. A man gets beaten for stepping out of line. But it's dressed for performance. If it looks strong, then it is strong. The inspector doesn't touch a single stone. Just counts heads and praises alignment. He doesn't say anything for a long time. Just walks slowly along the wall segment, flanked by 2 scribes who furiously write down his every murmur. Judged, measured, that someone in silk and perfume might notice. That maybe, just maybe, if you do well enough, you could be transferred, promoted, moved to a garrison where the food has flavor and the beds have straw. You stand in the heat for what feels like an hour. Then he stops, right in front of you. You, he says, pointing lazily, face. Reinforcement digging. You're back to working by torchlight, your shadow stretching like a stretched-out ghost behind you. Your heart slams in your chest. What? What about your face? He starts waking before dawn to clean the tool shed. Shines spades with river water, realigns bricks by eye. The guards mock him. And somewhere deeper, the strange, twisted pride that someone in power even looked at you. But he keeps at it. You straighten the path to your fire pit. You catch yourself whistling once. It feels foreign, like your lips have forgotten how. Turn it up, he says. You do. He squints, leans closer, then nods. Too thin. Feed this one more rice. You try not to blink. He waves a hand and walks off. Later, you're given an extra spoonful of rice. It's undercooked. Historians still argue whether such inspections were ceremonial or functional. Did these officials care about structural integrity or just about appearances? There's a rumor that one inspector back in Shin times ordered an entire segment rebuilt because he didn't like the color of the stone. This inspector is more subtle. He points to a laborer with a crooked stance and says, remove him from frontline tasks. Heavy rains overnight, a full collapse. It wasn't your section, but it doesn't matter. The inspectors will hear. They'll return. The cycle will repeat. The day slows down while he's here. By evening, he's gone. And just like that, things snap back. The tools are heavier again. But he left something behind, an idea. The idea that what you're doing here might be seen. It's nonsense, of course. But you cling to it anyway. There's a young man barely 20 who believes every word the inspector said. One day, a visiting officer spots him, makes a note. A week later, he's gone. Transferred? Promoted? Dead? No one knows. But the fact that no one knows keeps the fantasy alive. You start to pay attention to the little things. You wash your tunic in the stream. Then, one morning, you wake to find a wall segment crumbled, and someone will pay. Sure enough, new orders arrive, increased quotas, night shifts, and all that polish. All that ceremony? Gone. The inspector's words dissolve like morning mist. No extra rice, no neat alignments. Just raw survival again. But you still remember the moment he pointed at your face. The absurdity, the humiliation. It means you were real. If only for a breath. It's nearly winter again. You feel it in your fingertips before you see it in the sky, the sting when you grip a cold stone, the way your breath now leaves trails in the air like smoke from a dying fire. The days shorten, shadows stretch longer, and every joint in your body starts to complain with a low, constant ache like an old door refusing to shut. Work doesn't slow down, of course. If anything, it accelerates. Must finish this stretch before frost sets in, says one overseer. You don't bother asking why. Frost doesn't just make work harder, it makes life dangerous. Mortar won't set properly. You do the same, and for a few minutes, it helps. Then it snows, and the snow finds the holes you didn't know existed. Your toes go numb, then they burn. Then they feel like nothing at all. Tools freeze to fingers. Wet shoes become ice boxes. You wrap it around your neck like it's silk. At night, you share body heat again, pressing back to back, rotating places by the fire like it's a sacred duty. You still shiver, but now it's communal. The silhouette sharp against a pale sky. You catch your breath once not from cold or exhaustion, but from awe. The realization that this thing, this horrible, magnificent beast you've been chained to, is actually beautiful. The idea is to reinforce the wall's base before the frost heaves and cracks the lower stones. You learn tricks, warm your stones before lifting them. Breathe into your mittens to loosen the fingers. Sleep with your boots inside your shirt so they're not frozen stiff come morning. To name it is to jinx it. Like the season might overhear and decide to stay away out of spite. So you call it the other time or after snow or just nod silently when someone gestures toward a patch of sun. But the bags are soaked and twice as heavy as they should be. You bend, lift, stagger, drop. Bend, lift, stagger, drop. It's a rhythm you know well now, a rhythm you hate. Then the overseer yells, reinforce it. Like that's enough. It doesn't howl, it screams, and yet you keep working. Because not working isn't an option. Because cold doesn't excuse you from the schedule. They try to stand him and he slumps again. The guards poke him once. Then twice, nothing, because every rock not moved is a mark against your name. And you haven't seen your boots in weeks. The older workers wrap cloth around their feet and stuff straw into the gaps. From where you stand hip deep in icy mud, it sure doesn't feel like anyone stopped. They look like fangs. Like the wall is hungry. The notes float down the wall like mist-clear, slow melancholy. You follow the sound, an old man leaning against the stones, eyes half shut. He says nothing. Whatever it wants to be called. One morning, a piece breaks loose and tumbles down the slope, crushing a mule and nearly flattening a man's tent. Plays one final note and slips away. You never see him again. One man cuts a slit in the side of his boot to drain out the water. The next morning, 2 of his toes are black. No one says anything, he just walks slower for the rest of the week. They give you wool just to scrap, maybe from an old horse blanket. You gather snow instead, melt it over a flame. It tastes like dirt and ash. Still better than nothing. One morning, the water bucket is frozen solid. Someone smashes it with a pick and the pieces scatter across the ground like broken glass. Historians still argue how the workforce managed winter construction. Some records suggest seasonal halts. Others point to year-round effort driven by quotas and fear. You're reassigned to hauling sandbags for a while. But winter also brings strange beauty. The wall, under a light dusting of snow, looks like something out of a painting. The lines clean, only for a second. Then a car breaks a wheel and you're called over to fix it. Back to grunts and grit. You start measuring your life in fires, how close you can get to one, how long it lasts, how many others you're forced to share it with. Some nights you dream of heated baths, of fireplaces, of noodles and hot broth. You wake up knowing your own lip. There's a superstition in camp, don't talk about spring. One night you hear someone playing a flute, a real one. The wind gets worse in January. It cuts through cloth, through skin, through morale. The frost also plays tricks on the wall itself. Cracks appear where none were before. Stones shift slightly. Whole sections groan under their own weight. No one speaks for a full minute. You work in silence that day. One evening, a man collapses. Not from injury, just ... from being done. His legs give out. He doesn't get up. They leave him by the fire. He's gone by morning. Buried? Recovered? No one says. You start seeing icicles hanging from the wall's edge. And you're just trying to make it to spring. Or the other time. Then, almost imperceptibly, it happens. The ice starts melting first in the shadows, then in the open. One morning you wake up to the sound of dripping water instead of frozen silence. A tiny stream snakes through the base of the trench and you stare at it like it's a miracle. You even touch it. It's wet, real, not just frost pretending to be fluid. The mortar you laid before the frost cracks apart like old rice cakes. The carts groan like dying beasts as their wheels churn through puddles. You slip 3 times before sunrise, the third landing you face first in a slurry of mud and donkey manure. You laugh for some reason, so does the man next to you. That's spring for you, equal parts rebirth and disaster. Everything you built last season, you're fixing it now. The wall, once proud and straight, now looks like it's been drinking. But the orders are clear, make it look right again. No one is crushed, but tempers are. You redo it and redo it again. And again, the dry patches return. You stop waking up with your hands curled into claws. The calluses are still there, but now they feel like armor. Like maybe just maybe you're not quite broken. The third time, someone borrows a handful of rice and mixes it into the mortar. For luck, he says. You're not sure whether to laugh or cry over the waste of food. Too many vanish. Too many crack under the weight of repetition. You don't want to remember their names. So you don't ask. You watch them stumble through their first day, shoulders still soft, hands unblistered, optimism untouched. One jokes, how bad can it be? You don't answer. Still, the wall stays up this time. The joke? Historians have actually debated whether glutinous rice was added to ancient Chinese mortar to improve strength. Apparently, it works. The wall stretches in either direction so far, it seems to bend with the horizon. You've never seen the end of it. You're not sure anyone has. It's sour and warm from his pocket. It might be the best thing you've tasted in a year. Not perfect, just strong enough to pass the next inspection. How to smear mortar in a figure 8 instead of a slab. How to tie his waistcloth so it doesn't ride up when he bends. You don't know about politics. But you do know this. The wall feels like it was meant to be seen from above. Small things. Tricks you learn from the ghosts of the wall. The others feel it too. Faces are lighter, backs slightly straighter. Someone whistles again an old off-key tune. It's not joy, not yet, but it's the closest thing to hope you've felt in months. If from his palace, he imagines the line of stones stitching the mountains together like a thread across a wound. If he imagines your hands, your small, dirty, calloused hands shaping the future of the empire. Grass pokes through the earth. Tiny yellow flowers bloom in cracks between stones. Birds return. You hear their songs and almost don't recognize the sound. You forgot the world had music. Spring, the other time, has arrived, but it's not all blossoms and bird songs. The thaw turns solid ground into muck. Paths vanish into sludge. Tents sink. You mix lime, sand, and water in wide stone bowls using a stick the size of your leg. The proportions are never right. Too thin and it runs like soup. Too thick and it won't spread. The overseer doesn't care, he just wants bricks down. The drainage ditches overflow with meltwater. Tools rust overnight. They used to mix blood into the mortar in the old dynasties. You don't ask whether it was animal blood or human. You just nod. And keep stirring. They call it the rework season. Everyone becomes a repairman pulling stones, replacing beams, dragging fresh loads of sand to restabilize walls that now sag at odd angles. You're transferred to mortar duty. You hate mortar duty. It's heavy, sticky, and relentless. One day, a scholar-turned laborer mutters that evening a brick wall collapses before it even sets. The sun warms the earth a little more each day. But then come the new arrivals, fresh laborers, young, some full of fear. Others full of bravado, they'll learn. The seasoned workers don't speak to them much. Not out of cruelty, but protection. But one boy barely 16 maybe sticks close to you. He watches everything you do, copies your grip, follows your routine. He asks questions in a low, respectful voice. So eventually you speak. You show him how to balance a load of stones so his knees don't buckle. He thanks you. Then he gives you a dried plum he's been saving. One evening, you both sit on a stone ledge and watch the sun dip below the hills. He asks, "Do you think it'll ever be finished?" You don't answer right away. You want to give him truth, but not despair. So you say, parts will always be under construction, but someone somewhere will stop working eventually. He nods like he understands. Maybe he does. Historians still argue about how much of the wall was built purely for defense, and how much was meant to display imperial power, not by invaders, not by other kingdoms, but by gods. Sometimes you wonder if the emperor dreams of this wall, or if he even remembers you exist. Spring brings color back to the world. And with the thaw comes another strange sensation. You're still here, somehow. Somewhere along the wall, a bell rings. Not the sharp clang of alarm, this is different, slower, ritualistic. You pause mid-swing with your hammer and listen. The others stop too. The sound rolls along the ridge like mist, echoing off stone and bone alike. The stories are always vague, half-true, passed from tent to tent like rumors with muddy shoes. But this one is real. The bell says so. You've seen enough suffering up close. But the mood in camp turns heavy, like wet wool draped over your back. A few brave souls mutter about it over firelight. It wasn't to even his rice. What if it was for a sick brother? But mostly there's silence, not warmly but still. Don't want trouble, he mumbles. You nod, you don't want trouble either. It means someone died. Not from an accident, not from frostbite or exhaustion. A sanctioned death, an execution. Grief doesn't get you a break. Mourning has no time slot. You're still lifting stones, still stirring mortar, still dragging your body from pile to pile. The wall doesn't pause for your humanity. The wind kicks up dust that stings your eyes and teeth. Rain pelting your tunic. You're ordered to finish the line before nightfall. Tarps fly. Buckets roll downhill and the wall. It groans. For a moment, it's silent except for the rain and your own heartbeat. Someone cries out. Another drops their tool and runs. You don't blame them. The sky just tried to murder you. One man says, that was the gods, angry. Another replies, or just bored. You've heard of these punishments handed down when someone steals food, deserts, or strikes a superior. The execution takes place just past the southern tower. Not from the lightning, but from water, gravity, and tired joints. You spend the next 2 days rebuilding it. No one complains, not out loud. They say the condemned stole 2 sacks of rice and a pickaxe. Some records describe them as rare events meant to deter large-scale rebellion. Others suggest they were common enough to blend into the rhythm of work. You think both are true. People speak softer, tools clang quieter. Even the birds keep a little distance. Your hands are cracked but less bloody. Your back still aches, but you know which stretches help. You've learned to survive not just the work, but the system. You carried him to the fire. You helped rewrap his bandage. You shared your sour radish. Dry fish, salted turnips, bamboo bowls, even a small tin of pickled radish. It's like heaven rolled in on a wheel. They're rare enough to shock you, but not rare enough to stop happening. For later, he says. So they'll know I was here. No one confirms if he meant to flee or just feed someone. Doesn't matter. The outcome is the same. You don't go. Not because you expect anyone to care, but because someday someone might lift this stone and wonder, and in that wondering you live on. You do it gladly, even hum a little tune. You lift the tin of radish like it's real treasure. You can't remember the last time you tasted something sour. The wall has many layers: stone, wood, lime, pain, and now another one, fear. Historians still argue whether these executions were frequent or symbolic. Later that night, the guards seem twitchier. One even apologizes for snapping at you. The next day, work continues. That's the part no one tells you. But the rhythm shifts again. Then, a week later, a storm rolls in sudden, harsh, dramatic. Lightning cracks over the mountains like divine fury. You're up there when it happens, helping tamp the top level. Wind slapping your face. And then a bolt strikes the ground not 20 paces away. Everyone freezes. The overseer yells to keep working. But no one listens this time. You huddle under a stone arch with 6 others, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, you sit and shiver, watching the rain turn the earth into soup. When the storm finally clears, you emerge to find part of the wall collapsed. That week, a cart of supplies arrives. It's the first shipment in over a month. You're assigned to unload. That night, the cook uses it in the rice. Just a bit. But it's enough. You close your eyes with the first bite and let the tang wash over your tongue like a wave over scorched land. You nearly cry. One man does cry. He doesn't hide it. Spring is in full swing now. The trees are budding. The sun lingers longer. And oddly enough, you're no longer the weakest one here. That new boy, the one with the plum? He sprained his ankle last week. He calls you big brother now. You don't correct him. One evening, he shows you a smooth stone with his name carved into it. You nod. You understand. You take a stone too. Find a sharp nail. Scratch your name into it. By now, you don't measure time in months or moons. You measure it in segments, how much wall has been added since you arrived, how far the scaffolding stretches, how many steps it takes from your tent to the next tower. Today, they move you again. This time to a section being rebuilt from scratch after a rock slide. The air smells of pine and loose soil. It reminds you of places that don't hurt to remember barefoot days and fields you once played in, long before bricks and chains became your routine. Too steep, someone says. Poor foundation. You find yourself slipping into the pace like muscle memory. You don't ask why they're building here again if it failed the first time. You already know the answer. Orders. The site feels different, fresher, not because the work is lighter, but because the ground hasn't been trampled into submission yet. He tells you his village was destroyed by bandits. That's why he volunteered. Not for honor, for revenge. She doesn't say it with fire. Just a quiet emptiness, but even here the rhythm returns quickly. Rocks arrive, mortar is mixed, instructions are shouted. One afternoon, while placing a brick, your hand brushes against something smooth. Not stone, not wood. You dig a little with your fingers and uncover a bone. The way it connects one impossible place to another. You wonder how it looks from the stars. You wonder if the emperor thinks about that, if this was ever built for heaven's view more than man's. Each brick is a name, each step a heartbeat. The wall is cruel, yes, but it is also alive, fed by memory. Held up by ghosts. You don't tell him your story. Some memories are too stiff to unroll. You search but find no one. Maybe he's part of the wall now. Maybe you will be too. Not animal, human, thin curved. A rib probably, old yellowed by time. You glance around. No one else notices. You cover it back up and keep working. Historians still debate whether the Great Wall holds human remains, whether the bones of workers were truly mixed into the foundation or if that's a grim exaggeration. And with it, new laborers, new inspectors, new orders. From where you kneel, fingers dusted with lime and silence, the answer feels irrelevant. Your hands are tools now, more callous than skin. You don't remember when your knees stopped complaining, they just accepted the punishment. The wall grows higher, wider, straighter. What's the difference between being buried beneath it and being forgotten beside it? A tune with no words, just notes that rise and fall like waves on a quiet shore. You close your eyes and let it carry you. The boy, the one who calls you big brother, sits beside you at dusk. The scent of stone gives way to cooling earth and smoke from tiny fires. You lie back on a slope just below the wall, watching clouds slip past like forgotten thoughts. You nod. A gentle breeze brushes across your cheeks, lifting the edge of your tunic. It feels like a whisper, not a command, just a breath. The days blur again. Sometimes when no one is watching, you stand at the top and look out. It's stunning. The way the wall bends over the hills like a sleeping dragon, spine rippling over centuries. The low hum of distant insects. The soft flutter of canvas above your head. You begin to see the work differently. Not with pride, you're too tired for that, but with a strange reverence. The old man with the flute? You hear him again one night. Just a few notes drifting through fog. You carve another stone, not with your name this time, but with a message. I was here. I worked. I survived. You place it beneath the next brick. Press it in with care. No one sees. But maybe someone someday will feel it. The sky changes again. The sun rides higher. Summer is coming, but you? You're still here. Still breathing. Still building. And something about that feels like defiance. The work fades with the light now. The clang of hammers softens. The ache in your spine is dull now, almost familiar. Your hands rest on your chest, rough but steady. Somewhere nearby, someone is humming again. Tomorrow, the stones will still need lifting. The path will still need sweeping. The wall will still be waiting. But not tonight. Tonight, there's nothing more to prove. No orders, no lash. No race against the sun. Just you and the warmth of shared silence. Your thoughts slow. Your heartbeat steadies. And as the wall stretches into the darkness, so do your dreams long, winding, reaching for something beyond stone. Something gentle, something free. So sleep now, builder. The empire can wait.